But after 40-plus years convincing us that rock and roll ain't noise pollution, age and illness seem to have finally quietened them. It's sad news for their millions of fans around the world.
If you've ever cranked up an AC/DC song and felt the electric jolt of pure rock and roll, you have one man to thank: Angus Young. The legendary lead guitarist and co-founder of AC/DC isn't just a musician. He's an icon. With his signature schoolboy outfit, blistering guitar solos, and boundless energy on stage, he spent over 5 decades defining the sound of hard rock. Born in Scotland and raised in Australia, Young transformed from a rebellious kid with a guitar into a global rock superstar. Today, with an estimated net worth of $160 million, he enjoys a lavish yet surprisingly private lifestyle. But behind the screaming guitars and wild performances lies a man with some fascinating quirks, from eccentric hobbies to a multi-million-dollar real estate empire. In this deep dive, we'll uncover the untold story of Angus Young, his rise to fame, his personal life, and the extravagant world he lives in today. On March 31st, 1955, AC/DC's Angus McKinnon Young was born in Glasgow, Scotland, as the youngest of 8 children in a hard-working, working-class family. His father, William Young, was a World War II veteran, while his mother, Margaret, took care of the household. Life in post-war Scotland was tough, and the Youngs struggled financially, but their home was always filled with music and laughter. Seeking a better life, the family immigrated to Australia, settling in Sydney. It was a massive change, but one thing remained constant: music. The Young household was practically a rock and roll boot camp. His older brother George found success with the Easy Beats, one of Australia's first internationally recognized rock bands. But it was Malcolm Young, Angus's older brother, who would shape his future. Malcolm, a gifted rhythm guitarist, quickly saw Angus's raw talent and encouraged him to pick up the guitar. Inspired by blues legends like Chuck Berry and B.B. King, Angus spent hours locked in his room, mastering licks and riffs that would one day electrify millions. What he lacked in size, with Angus Young's height at just 5 feet 2 inches, he made up for with an explosive playing style. Little did the world know, this scrappy Scottish-Australian kid, with his relentless energy and unmatched guitar skills, was about to change rock music forever. In the winter of 1963, the Young family left behind the grey, unforgiving streets of Glasgow, Scotland, seeking a brighter future in Australia. The promise of opportunity lured thousands across the seas, but for the Youngs it was more than just a change in scenery. It was a necessary escape. The brutal Scottish winters, coupled with limited prospects, made it clear that their future lay elsewhere. Upon arrival, they found themselves in the Spartan confines of a migrant hostel, a temporary home for those who had wagered everything on a new beginning. But hardship was nothing new for the Youngs. With resilience forged in war and working-class grit, they pressed on, eventually settling in Sydney. It was here that the family's musical lineage began to take shape. As we already discussed, George Young, the eldest of the musically inclined brothers, had already carved out a name for himself with the Easy Beats, Australia's first true rock export. His success served as a beacon, illuminating a path that Angus and Malcolm would soon follow. Guitars were not just instruments in the Young household, they were heirlooms, passed from brother to brother like sacred relics. Angus, the youngest of them all, took to the instrument like a prodigy. With no formal training, he was largely self-taught, honing his craft with the fervor of a man possessed. His influences were raw and electric: Chuck Berry, Muddy Waters, and the blues greats who played as if their very souls were embedded in every note. What began as childhood fascination would soon erupt into a force that would define the sound of a generation. By 1973, Sydney's rock scene was a battleground of sound, where bands clawed for attention in the haze of cigarette smoke and spilled beer. It was in this charged atmosphere that two brothers, Malcolm and Angus Young, set out to carve their own legacy. With the disciplined precision of craftsmen, they assembled the first incarnation of AC/DC, with Colin Burgess on drums, Larry Van Crete on bass, and Dave Evans as their frontman. But the early days were anything but glamorous. The Australian pub circuit was ruthless, a proving ground where only the loudest and most relentless survived. AC/DC played wherever they could. A dive bar here, a sweaty club there, fueling their performances with sheer energy. And yet, something was missing. That something was Bon Scott. The decision to replace Dave Evans with the gravel-voiced Scott was a turning point, a moment when AC/DC found its true identity. Scott was a force of nature, a charismatic outlaw whose raw, blues-soaked vocals meshed perfectly with the young brothers' thunderous riffs. With him at the helm, AC/DC transformed from a promising band into an unstoppable force. It was during this time that Angus Young also honed the persona that would become his trademark. The schoolboy uniform, a relic from his teenage years, and the manic, high-voltage stage antics that would cement his place as one of rock's most electrifying performers. The band was still fighting for recognition, but the foundation was set. AC/DC was no longer just another rock band. They were a movement waiting to explode. By the mid-1970s, AC/DC had become a force of nature in the Australian rock scene, but the world had yet to take notice. That all changed with the high-voltage album 1975, a record that crackled with raw, unfiltered energy. It was a declaration of war against the polished rock sound of the era, and it set the stage for their international breakthrough. Let There Be Rock. 1977 solidified their reputation, unapologetically loud, rebellious, and primed for greatness. Then came Highway to Hell, released in 1979. It was the album that launched AC/DC into the rock stratosphere, turning them into global icons. But just as they reached the summit, tragedy struck. Bon Scott, the wild-hearted poet of the band, died suddenly in 1980. Many assumed it was the end of AC/DC. Instead, it became the beginning of something even greater. Enter Brian Johnson. With a voice like gravel soaked in whiskey, he stepped in as frontman, and the band roared back with the 1980 album Back in Black. A tribute to Scott, the album became one of the highest-selling records in history, proving that AC/DC was unstoppable. The 80s and 90s saw continued dominance with the albums For Those About to Rock and The Razor's Edge, each adding to the band's unbreakable legacy. Angus Young and Brian Johnson literally carried the rock band on their shoulders. Even as time marched on, AC/DC refused to fade. Their album, Black Ice, released in 2008, roared onto the charts, and Power Up, published in 2020, proved that their brand of no-nonsense, hard-hitting rock was timeless. Decades passed, trends came and went, but AC/DC remained a colossus, unchanged, unyielding, and forever electrifying. Even for a band as legendary as AC/DC, time proved to be an unforgiving force. The first major blow came with Malcolm Young's declining health. The backbone of AC/DC's sound, Malcolm had always been the quiet architect behind the band's signature riffs. But in 2014, he was forced to step away due to dementia, leaving an irreplaceable void. He passed away in 2017, marking the end of an era. Then came another setback. Brian Johnson, the voice of Back in Black and the band's tireless frontman, was sidelined in 2016 due to severe hearing issues. With AC/DC's Rock or Bust tour in full swing, the band faced an impossible choice: cancel the remaining dates, or find a last-minute replacement. Enter Axl Rose. The Guns N' Roses frontman stepped in, delivering performances that shocked even the most skeptical fans. Despite these challenges, AC/DC refused to call it quits. Their resilience became the stuff of legend. In 2020, they staged yet another comeback with Power Up, an album dedicated to Malcolm's memory. With Brian Johnson back, alongside classic members like Cliff Williams and Phil Rudd, AC/DC proved once again that rock and roll never dies. It just gets louder. But what gets even louder is their wealth, as we're about to find out. Angus Young, the ever-electric guitarist of AC/DC, has spent decades basking in rock and roll royalty, and his residence in Elton, Netherlands reflects just that. Unlike the flashy, ostentatious estates of many rock stars, Young's mansion is a study in refined taste, where old-world charm meets modern luxury. The grand driveway, lined with perfectly manicured hedges, leads up to an estate that exudes timeless elegance. Venetian plaster walls and rich hardwood floors set the tone for a space that is as sophisticated as it is inviting. A custom-built office, complete with vintage rock memorabilia and an extensive guitar collection, offers Young the perfect retreat when he's not on stage. The chef's kitchen is a masterpiece in itself. Spacious, gleaming with top-tier appliances, and designed for both practicality and indulgence. It's a place where classic European charm meets contemporary functionality. Ideal for intimate dinners or grand gatherings. Step outside, and the estate unfolds into a picturesque backyard, complete with a stunning pool and spa. The outdoor space is tailored for relaxation, a serene contrast to the high-energy performances Young is known for. Whether it's a quiet evening under the stars or an evening entertaining close friends, the estate embodies the very essence of old-money sophistication, understated yet undeniably powerful. Despite amassing an estimated net worth of $160 million, Angus Young has never been one to flaunt his wealth in the typical rock star fashion. While many of his contemporaries indulge in sprawling car collections and high-speed thrills, Young remains remarkably reserved when it comes to material excess. That said, his collection does feature a few carefully selected gems. Classic Rolls-Royces, known for their old-world craftsmanship, and a handful of high-end sports cars that remain largely untouched in his garage. For Young, these are less about status and more about appreciating fine engineering. Much like his approach to music, at his core, Young has always prioritized his craft over material possessions. His wealth may afford him the finest luxuries, but his heart remains firmly with his guitar, his music, and the legacy he continues to build with AC/DC. Angus's guitar is a symbol of pure, unfiltered rock and roll energy. Ranked among the greatest guitarists of all time by Rolling Stone and VH1, his impact on hard rock and heavy metal is undeniable. AC/DC's raw, electrifying sound laid the foundation for generations of musicians, influencing everyone from Metallica to Guns N' Roses. Angus Young's signature Gibson SG, combined with his ferocious playing style, created some of the most recognizable riffs in rock history. Back in Black, Highway to Hell, and Thunderstruck remain anthems decades after their release. But beyond the music, it's his stage presence that cements his legend. With the schoolboy uniform, the duck walk, and the manic energy, Angus Young isn't just playing guitar. He's commanding an audience like few ever have. Even as rock evolves, Angus Young of AC/DC's legacy remains untouchable, a testament to a career built on raw talent, passion, and an unrelenting dedication to the craft. And on that note, we draw the curtains on today's video. If you enjoyed our narration of Angus's life, wealth, and legacy, then hit the like button and subscribe to this channel for more videos like this. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.